Is the deeper issue a lack of cities and towns?
Well, that's where people want to live. That's where we need the development to be, at reasonable densities, with good public transport.
Yeah.
And when I say building new towns, I don't necessarily mean, building, a new town in the middle of somewhere.
Yeah.
But I mean, the government taking the lead in building large new towns on the outskirts of Dublin, the outskirts of Cork, and the outskirts of Limerick, and Galway, where people want to live. The old kind of idea of Milton Keynes and Garden City, and that would be a big shift in thinking.
It would, but it seems like the obvious thing to do. Dublin is just even looking at the UK model. I mean, the way they've done it with Milton Keynes. I mean, London is a city that it's on a 50% of the GDP of England, and they have housing crises, in other parts of England as well. So, is it a case and housing crisis in London? But is it a case of because when you build houses in certain parts, in rural areas, you're not building cities. You're not building facilities. You're building houses. So, again, going back to that idea of cities and towns, is it something that we should? Is that the deeper issue?
I think it should be part of the solution. I don't know one thing will solve this problem.
Yeah.
But we have. I think what's happened in Ireland though was we did have the experience of building new towns, like Tala, like Blanchardstown. That was another example. And for a lot of people, they say they didn't turn out that well. But the perfect is the enemy of the good. What they have provided is a huge amount of housing for lots of people. That's more affordable than most parts of Dublin, and not that far from the city centre. So probably need to go back to doing things like that. But that won't do it on its own. There's room for rural housing as well, and I think there's also room for natural growth within smaller towns and market towns, and some of those are quite constrained in their growth, because of deficiencies in water infrastructure, wastewater, things like that. There's no town or village in Ireland that shouldn't be allowed to grow by 10% or 15% in my view, but often they can't because of that.